So hello students. So we are going to continue with our data frame. So previously we have actually gone through the data frame. So and prior to data frame data structure, we have seen on the series data structure. So these both data structures are from Pandas library. So we have already seen the series data structure where it actually gives one-dimensional data structure, and we have also went into the data frame, which is a tabular data structure, and it is quite similar to an Excel spreadsheet. So it's more than one dimension. So it is actually an extension of a series, but you have multiple dimensions that we have actually seen this. And of course, it has an ordered group of columns, and every column may contain values, numeric strings, boolean, etc. So how do we actually create a data frame? This can be created by passing a dictionary object to the data frame's constructor. So of course, we have seen the dictionary object before. Dictionary object contains two elements, which is one is the key, and of course the other one is the value for each key. So this is what we have actually seen earlier. So of course, we have seen this example. We need to import pandas SPD, and of course we are creating a dictionary object, right? And we have the key and also the values. So when we actually create a dictionary object, you need to pass that dictionary object to the data frame constructor. So we use the pandas and we use the data frame constructor, and you pass the dictionary object, and you get this. You get the color items. So the key elements becomes automatically the column, and by default you'll have the index, which is actually given. And of course, these are the values for respective columns. We have color, items, and also price for each items. We have seen this earlier, so this is just a very quick recap. And another data frame that we can actually create by using the employee name, skill set, and experience. This is another one that we've actually created. Using your own names and also your skill set and also the experience here. So this is another example that we did before. So we can actually select a few columns from the data frame. So you can select any columns from the data frames in an arbitrary order. It doesn't mean that you have to follow in the particular order. So using the columns option. So the columns will always be created in the order we specify of how they are stored within the dictionary object. So the order of the column is really depends on how we specify which order of the column comes first. So if we put the experience years before the employee name, then that's how it's going to construct. So of course, we have also seen the index option, whereby we can actually specify the indices of our choice to the data frame. So previously you have seen that when we are not providing the index, it actually automatically assigns the index 0, 1, 2. But we also have the option that we can specify our index of our choice. So that we use the key index under the inside the data frame constructor. You pass the dictionary object and you specify using the key index to specify the index. So you can actually change. So and when you see accordingly, it changes the index of our choice. So you can actually also change the index. So we have seen this earlier. So now let's see this one. Yeah. So when you have actually created a data frame, you can also apply some certain operators on the data frame. So for example, let's see if you go to this data frame, this is my frame 3. Let's say you want to find out all those employees who have more than 4 years of experience. So you can actually apply operator, conditional operator on your data frame. So for example, let's say we have my frame 3, right? So let's try my frame 3, and we are going to set the index. So we're going to set the condition here. So usually when we write my frame and square bracket, this is where we actually write the index. So here we can also specify the column and apply the conditional operator. So for example, let's say if we want to focus on the column experience years, right? So here we're going to set and we're going to write my frame 3 column, which one? This is experience, experience years. That's how we wrote. Let me check again. Experience years. Okay. Experience years. So that means this one, we are actually going to check my frame experience years column, and we can set a condition if it's more than 4 years. So this will display the data that actually fulfills this condition, which is any employer which has an experience of more than 4 years of experience. So when you do that, you can see there's only one employee names that actually been highlighted here, because we actually wrote here the condition is more than 4 years. So as you can see in the data frame, the only person with more than 4 years is Ali, as you can see here. So this is how we can actually also manipulate the data frame. We can actually set a conditional operator, and you can get certain outputs like how we have actually done. And you may also, if you look at this data set, you may also transpose this. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with matrix transpose. So you can also transpose this table. That means whatever the column now becomes the row, and the row now becomes a column. So how can you actually transpose? So it's very simple. We just write my frame 3 and dot t. So t transpose. When you do that, you can immediately see that now the column becomes the row becomes the column. So this is the simple operator. Okay, so moving on. So what we have seen earlier is one way of creating a data frame, which is to create a dictionary object. But there's also an alternative way to create a data frame, and that is to pass input arguments to the data frame in the following order. So you need to pass a data matrix, you need to pass an array for label for the indices by using the index option, and also an array containing the column names. So this one you use the columns option. So first thing is data matrix. So earlier we've seen the data is by using the dictionary object. Now we can actually use the data matrix. So for that we can actually use the NP arrange, not arrange, it's arrange. So you can set the range to create an array. And then to convert this array to matrix, then we use the reshape function. So let's see how we can actually do that. So let's say we want to create a matrix. So when we use the NP, which is the NumPy library, so we're going to use a range. So this function range function allows us to generate numbers. So usually you can actually assign starting number to ending number, for example. So it will generate the range of numbers. So let's say if we want to create a range of numbers up to 14. So when you write when you don't specify the starting value, by default it starts from 0. And when you just write a value 15, for example, this means this is the ending value. So it will create the number value from 0 until 14. So you can see it creates an array, right? This creates an array from 0 to 14. But the requirement is we need to create a matrix, right? That's the requirement, right? Need to create a data matrix. Why data matrix? Because if you see the format of this data frame, you can see that there is row and there is column, right? So that's why we want to create in a format of matrix. If you see that the value, this is row 1, column 1. This is row 0, column 1. This is row 0, column 2, like that. So it's in the format of a matrix format. So that's why we're interested in creating a data matrix. But if you just use the NP arrange, it will generate the numbers from 0 to 14. but it's not in a matrix format. So that's why in order for us to create the matrix, so in this case, let's say we have 0 to 40, that is 15 numbers, right? So maybe we can actually set a matrix of 3 by 5. That means, so we use reshape function, reshape. So you are reshaping back. So, and you need to specify how many rows and columns. So let's say 3 by 5 matrix. So which means this is 3 rows and 5 columns, right? So when we create this, now we can see you have created a data matrix. This is row 0, row 1, row 2. This is column 0, column 1, column 2, 3, 4. So you have 3 by 5 matrix. So once we have created this data matrix, we can now pass this data matrix to the data frame constructor. So let's do that. Yeah, so this is a 2-dimensional array or matrix. So it's not 1-dimensional. 1-dimensional means it's series. It's not the data frame structure. So that's a series data structure. So now we are looking at the data frame data structure. We have which has more than 1-dimensional array, right? So here we do 3 by 5. So let's say if you want to create a data frame. So for example, data frame 4 from this matrix, then what do we do? So we can create the name data frame, iframe4, and of course we need to use the data frame constructor. So remember that data frame constructor. Now you need to actually, of course earlier we didn't assign a name to this, right, to this array. So therefore we're just going to rewrite this back here. This entire thing we just can copy, and let's go here. Yeah, so we need to pass the matrix, and remember the second one is this first thing done, which is we pass the data matrix. If you look at the requirement in the following order, we need to pass the data matrix, and then we need to assign the index option and also the column options, right? So how many index do we have? Index means it is actually referring to the row. So because this is 3 by 5, so of course you need to put comma and index. So here you can actually assign a name for your index by using the square bracket. So let's say we give row 1, row 0, row 1, and row 2. So these are the indexes for the row, and we can also use the column options, right? Columns, make sure it's correct, square bracket. So we'll start with column 0. So this one we have until column 4 because we have 5 columns. So we're going to start the naming from column 0. So column 1, column 2, column 3, and finally column 4. So we have 4 up to this point. Okay, let me just make this big. Okay, maybe you can't really see this. Column 4. So we have done. So then what we do, we try to view my frame 4. And there you have it. So you can see we have we have created a data frame structure by passing the matrix, the index, and also the column options. So this is an alternative way. The first one that we saw is on passing the dictionary object. And this is the second way that we can actually work on it. So if you want to double check, you can actually check on what are the column names that you actually have assigned by using. So this is your my frame, your data frame's name, and use the dot to actually see what are the objects that are affiliated with the data frame. So you are referring to my frame 4, which is the data frame, and when you use dot, it is checking on the objects. So when you put my frame dot columns, it will specify all the objects that falls under the column options. So you can see that it actually shows all the index of columns. And what's the type? This is an object type. So likewise, you can also check on the my frame 4. We can check on the index objects. What are all the index objects? So you can see row 0, 1, 2. So this is how we can actually really check on the index option objects. And likewise, if you want to see in terms of the values, so you can type my frame 4 and values. Values. So when you do this, it will show you all the values. So in this way, you can actually view all the objects and also values from the data frame. So let's say if you are interested in viewing the data of a particular column only. So what you can do, you can type my frame. Let's say if you want to view from column 2, so you can specify the column index. So, sorry, well, because I didn't put my frame 4, that's why I'm receiving the error. So you're able to see this. So likewise, if you want to see what's in row 0, okay, the key error, sorry, my frame 4, this one allows the, okay, so this one, it's only allows the input of the column, which is the key. So you're only able to see the column numbers. Yeah. So just now when we actually type the row, so we received the error. So there's a different way of how we need to specify for rows. So for column, you can actually just type one column name and you are able to view all the available rows values. But for rows, there's a different way of doing it. You have to specify the starting and also ending of the row. We will see in our upcoming example. So again, to illustrate on the row, so for the column, you can actually just type the name of the column and it shows all the rows. So for the rows, so let's say, let's display back my frame 4. So we can get an idea. So just now we can select any column and it will automatically display the value of the rows. But if you want to display the row, we actually have to specify the starting row and also the ending row. So let's say in this example, let's say if we just want to view from row 0 to row 1. So we can actually specify my frame. So this one is, we want to start from row 0 and the ending row. Now this one, always remember that it is the ending should be before, right? So let's say if we want to display row 0 and row 1. So we should write row 2 so that the end will be at row 1. So let's type row 2. See why it's returning an error. Oh, again the name, sorry. Yeah. Oops. Oh, okay. This is showing until. Okay, so whenever you're using the index names. Okay, so this is something for us to actually capture. So when we are using the index names, row 0, and when we use row 2, it captures until row 2. So, but let's say if we use the index value, which is from 0. So earlier, this one is 0, 1, where's it? Okay, this is 0, 1, 2. So if we use the index 2, then it should show only these first 2. So let's use the index 2. Yes. Okay, so this one, I think now it actually applies on the position of the row index. So if we want to capture the first row and also the second, row 0 and row 1, then we have to use the index in terms of the order, which is from row 0 until row 2. But if we use the name of the index, like row 0 until row 2, it captures from row 0 to row 2. So this is something that for us to actually take note. So this is how some of the syntax when you want to use for the row, but for the column you can just straight away specify one column be displaced in terms of rows. So these are some of the challenges in terms of the Python syntax that we actually need to understand. But not to worry, when we actually keep on doing more and more exercises, then of course we'll get used to it. Now you can see here that we have given the column names, right? The index and also the row. We can also give the entire index a name. So this is the row is what we call as the index, and the column is what is known as the columns, right? So we can assign a name for the entire columns and assign a name for the entire rows, which is index. So just for you to get that idea, so let's type my frame 4, and we are referring to this index. Index is the rows, and we can assign a name. So what will be the name? Let's say we can just use rows, and my frame 4, we are columns. We can assign the name as columns. And now when you try to view my frame 4, you see that it assigns the name columns and this is rows. So this is something that you can actually do as well. Now we can also add an additional column. So now you have this from column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say we want to add the 5th column. So when we want to add the 5th column, of course, what we can actually do is you must take note of how many rows that you have. We have 1, 2, 3 rows, right? Why we need to know that is so that we can determine. So what we can do is we can now, we are still in my frame 4, and in my frame 4 we want to create a new column. So we can give this name column 5. And what is this column 5 is going to be? We're going to use the NumPy random generator operator. So we're going to use the function of create a random integer, right? So this is from the NumPy. So this random integer, it requires an input. So of course the first input is you can actually set the starting and the ending range of the numbers that you want to set. But let's say if we write the value 100, means we want to randomly generate an integer from 0 to 100. I mean within the range of 0 to 100. I'm not to say 100, 99, 0 to 99. Okay, and we can also specify the size. The size means how many rows that we want. So in this case we only want 3, right? So now we can check on my frame 4. So you can see that yes, we have managed to create a column 5, and which has 3, 33, 28, 32. So all these numbers are randomly generated and they are less than 100. So this is one way that we can actually do that as well. So if you want to try to understand how this input function and for the random integer works, you can just simply try by just typing the same thing, random integer. You can maybe generate a number from 0 to 4. So whatever, actually it's supposed to be something like this, 0 to 5, for example. So this means that you'll be generating the starting value from 0 until 4. Okay, but if you're just specifying 5, which means by default you are generating a number from 0, any number, random number. And in this case, let's say if you want to set a size of 100, so you will generate 100 random integers. So you can just try and see. Yeah, you can see that there are some values that are starting from 1, because whenever you don't specify, it will start from 0. And you don't see any numbers that has the value of 5, right? Because this is the end limit or -1. So let's say if you don't want to have the number 0, so you can just specify like this. 1, 2, oh, sorry. This is the syntax. Okay, yeah, this is an invalid syntax because for random integer, this particular function uses this comma. So the lowest value and also the highest value, comma with the size. So it has this kind of syntax. So now you can actually see that there's no value of 0. So if you don't specify this, the starting value, the lowest value, will have 0. If you want to have some values that start from 5 and with the size of 100, then you can specify the lower limit and also the high limit, so with the comma. So is that okay? So this is on my frame 4. So let's say we have this particular my frame 4. We can see that here there is a 0, right, which is on column 0, row 0. So we can actually specifically write a value, override a value here by specifying the index and also the column in my frame 4. So let's see how we can actually do that. So we can write my frame 4 and we're going to specify the column and also the index. So this is column 0 and this will be 0 as well. Let's say we want to replace it with the value of 50, for example. See, let's view in the frame 4. So now we can see that we have overwritten the value. So please take note that you have to specify the column label and then the row column. So if you do it the other way around, you'll have an error, right? So let's see what's the next one. I think we are done on that. So next, let us actually see, let me just make this a bit smaller, how we can actually put the data together. So what we have done so far is how to create the data frames and how to, the first technique that we use is by creating a dictionary object, and we managed to pass that to the data frame constructor. The second way is, of course, we created a matrix, then we use the input variable of the index and also the columns, and we created it, and we also have seen that how we can also use comparative operator. We can actually use the comparative operator to also view the data, how we can actually add a column, how do we actually change the values, and things like that. That's what we have actually seen here, how to name the index values. So now some of the important things that we're going to look is how to manipulate the data for preparation so that data can be analyzed and visualized. So there are several operations that can be performed by using the pandas library. So you can actually perform this both in the series or a data frame object. They can actually, you can put it together, because sometimes when you want to do data analytics, data analysis, you may have various data sources that you want to actually put it together, or you have various columns and rows that you want to extract out and put it together. So some of these approaches will be quite helpful. So the first one we're going to see is concatenate. So under the pandas library, there's this concat function. So it enables you to concatenate. That means join objects along an axis. So this is joins along an axis. There's also merging, and also we have combining. So we will see how each one of these approaches works and how the output looks like, so that you know when to use concatenate, when to use merging, and when to use combining. So merging, it actually so concatenate basically it just takes and joins, and merging it looks for on the keys and the columns and try to see where it can get the common data, and it'll try to merge. Combining is allows you to connect and overlap data to actually fill in the missing values in data structures. So we will see the example so they can understand further how each one of these looks like. So let us actually look at concatenating data. So this is a process of linking together two or more separate data structures and placing them next to one another to make a single entity. So of course, NumPy also has this function concatenate, but Pandas has this function which is concat, which is also the same to perform this concatenation. So let's say, for example, let's try to generate two series of 5 randomly generated numbers. Okay, we try to create a two series, then we'll try to concatenate. So let's create the first one. So we'll name it as my series 1, and we're using the pandas library to pass the series data structure constructor, and we are going to use the NumPy random number generator, and we are going to generate, let's say for example, let's say we can generate 5 numbers. Generate just 5 numbers, and let's assign index for them by using the index option. So let's set the index as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, not 5, until 4 only, right? Oh, I forgot the 3, sorry. 3, 4. Okay, now we have 5. Okay, so let's try to view my series 1. Yes, we managed to create a random number, right? We remember that earlier we used a random integer. So when you use random, you can see that it creates a float number. There you can see the type also. So if you use the random integer, then it will only generate integer. So this is the series 1. Let's create another one, which is my series 2. Okay, let's hold on. Why nothing is appearing here? It's supposed to be okay. The setting is wrong. Okay, now let's go back here. All right. So let's make another one, which is my series 2. Again, the same thing. We're gonna pass the random numbers that we're gonna create. Again, we're gonna create 5. Assign the index. Let's say if you assign the index as 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5, right? Yep, this is 5. And this is my series 2. Okay, so that's fine. So you have 5 numbers here, and you have 5 numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is the index is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So now we can actually use to concatenate these two series, then we can actually type the following command. So let's create this. We use the pandas library concat. So this is the function. So we have to specify what are the data structures that we want to concat. So in this case, it is my series 1 and also my series 2. So when you do that, you can see it creates a single entity, a single data structure. It concatenates, right? So you are able to use the concat. So let's see, if you use my series 2, the sequence is important. If you change the sequence, my series 2 and my series 1, then you'll see it becomes the other way around, right? You start from my series 2 first. So let's change this, my series 1, my series 2. So it joins, it just continues, right? Joins. So let's say if you are going to set the index as the same as previous one, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say the same indexing you're using as previous one. Do this, so you see the index are the same. So when you actually concatenate, you will see the index is still the same, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But this will not be the case when we're using for the just now under the combining, right? You'll see the difference. Concatenate doesn't matter whether index is same or different, you'll just take and join. But combine, it will actually allow to connect and overlap, and it will use the index. So we will see that later. Okay, for this case, we'll maintain S7, sorry, not 7, 5, right? 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, 1 might be 6, 7, 8, and 9. So this is on concatenate. Now, of course, the concat function works on the axis, which is equal to 0. That means it's concatenating based on the rows, right? How many rows you have, it just combines on the rows by default. And it will return a series, one dimension. Right? You have two data and it combines, right? One on top of the other. So this is still one dimension. So it's not creating a data frame. So it returns a series. But if you set the axis function as 1, which means you are referring now, you are going to concat based on columns, then of course the result will be a data frame, right? So let's say using the same code, let's copy to make it easier. Same one, copy this and paste it here. So now we're going to add an additional, which is on axis equals to 1. So now it will no longer be a series data type, but it will be a data frame. So do you see? This is from the first one. It creates an additional column to actually try to combine these two. Now in this case, if you see that it uses the column axis to actually join, to actually concatenate. So if you see in this case, you have the first column and you have the any n, which is there's no available values here. And likewise, you can actually see here. So basically, this is the line. This is the column that it is trying to combine. This is the axis. When you say axis is 1, it's using the column to combine the first and also the second one, right? So, but because the index values are different, so that's why you have this NaN or non-available values, numeric values appears here. But let's say if you change the index of the my series 2, if you change the index of my series 2, this one, if you change it to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, change it to this, then you will see that will come side by side, this one. You see this? So it uses this axis, column axis, to join these two. Is that okay? So we can also assign the column names. earlier we gave the name to all these columns, right? But now these are known as the keys. Remember, in a data dictionary structure, these are known as the keys, right? So we can actually use the option keys along the axis 1, and so that the key becomes the column names of the data frame. So what we can do is the PD, still use the same one, concat function. So we are joining my series 1 with my series 2, and this is along the column axis, if we set as 1. And now we can also set the keys. That means we can rename each value. So we can name as series 1, and let's say this is series 2. So when you do this, there, you can see now we can actually change the name of the series. So likewise, I think the earlier data frame that we've actually seen, which is, let me just close this and show. Earlier we've created some data frames, right? The job, where is it? Yeah, we have my frame 3, which has the employer name, skill set, and also experience, right? And also you have my frame 2, which has experience and employee name. So is it possible now we have two data frames that we don't have the same, this one my frame 3 has one column more. So are we able to concatenate? Yes, we will able to concatenate. So but let's see what is the outcome is like together. Is it here? No. Where is it? Okay, here. Let's go back to the slide. Let's try this. So PD frame 3 with my frame 2. Oh, sorry, forget the square bracket. Happens. Yeah. So you're able to concatenate between these two frames, but this is actually my frame 2, which only has two columns. It doesn't have the skill set column. So that's why you see that there is no values displayed here. So yeah, you're still able to concatenate. All right. So these are some of the concatenate functions on how you can concatenate based on, if you don't specify the axis, then by default it concatenate based on rows, but if you specify one, then it concatenate based on the column. So these are some of the examples. So the function concatenate is applicable to a data frame as well. So what does it mean, data frames as well? So this is what we have actually done, right? Two data frames, and you're able to concatenate these two data frames. So that's what we have actually done. But for the sake of examples, maybe we can actually create another two more data frames and concatenate two data frames that may not have the same kind of columns. And what happens is, of course, it appears there's no value is being displayed. So let's see another example. This is actually a concatenate two data frames. So the same thing we're going to do. Let's create two sets of data frames here. So let's say the first my frame, now we use the same name, my frame, doesn't matter. So we're going to create a data frame constructor. So this one we will use the first technique. What is the first technique? Is by using the dictionary, right? So dictionary means we're going to use the curly brackets. So we're going to assign the keys, which is the student name, and of course we are going to assign it together with what's the student name. So we're going to create the list for the student name. So let's say in this case, we just make it simple. We just use ABC. Say 3 students that are there, ABC. So this is on student name, then comma. You now have the second key. So we have the sex or the gender, and we need to create another list. Oh, sorry, not this one. Create another list. So this one, just randomly male, female, female. So, and maybe the last one, the key is age. So we can set the age. Let's create another list for that. So the age, but the age we make it numeric. So let's say it's 10, 16, and let's say 17, for example. Then another one, which is the school. We can create another list for that. So maybe this is primary, right? 10 years is primary. Then this category. Copy and paste it here. Secondary. Okay. So I think that should be it. Let's see what's, I can't see what's on the, we have a curly bracket here. Side. Yeah. So this part, there should be the square bracket and then curly bracket to indicate you're closing the dictionary object. Okay. So this should be it. Oops. Why is it difficult to view it here? To the side and enter. Let me see why I can't view it properly. There should be a square bracket. And then enter. Yeah. So my frame 1. Okay, so we have created this. This is my frame 1. Okay, so we'll try to create the same kind of data frame structure, but purposely we'll try to remove the gender. Okay, let's create another one. So we call it as my frame 2. So just make sure you change this. My frame 2. So we can change A, B, C. Maybe this becomes D. And purposely create the same name here again. So this will be useful later. So we can see the difference when it's actually merging and things like that. So remove the entire, remove the entire gender, and of course the age, change it. Maybe you can put 9, 13, and 15, for example. Okay, so we have 2 DE, right? So we have that. So now it's the same thing. When you actually concatenate these two data frames, is same like how we have done before. So we use the concat function, and we're going to specify my frame 1, whichever that you specify first, that will be the top, my frame 2, right? So when you have it there, you have A, B, C, D, E, A. But you see the index, it's repeating, right? So it doesn't matter. So this is how you can actually concatenate. So the non-available values, you can see, have been placed in any columns whose information is not present in individual data frames, which is this one, right? There's no value being specified here. So automatically you'll see the NaN. Same like how we've seen earlier one, right, on the skills and also on the experience, that data frame. It's the same thing. So you can see that you can still concatenate whenever a particular key is not available, value is not available, it just display as NaN. All right. So now let us go through let me just check the time. Okay. So what we have seen is on the concatenate. Now we are looking at merging the data. Now, when you want to merge, you are trying to merge in terms of through the connections of rows, or you use the keys. The keys actually, they are the common columns to be merged. So based on the keys, yes, you will actually obtain a new data in the tabular form. And merge actually does that. Either use the keys of the columns, or as a common values. So let's say if you want to merge my frame 1 and my frame 2. So let's see what happens when you actually try to merge my frame 1 and my frame 2. We are using the pandas and we use this function as merge. So my series, it's my series plot. My frame 1, my frame 2. See, when you merge, what happens? Oh, sorry, what happens? Okay. Let me go back here. Why I'm not getting any things to any output is that because you see here, when you're not mentioning on which column that you should merge, it will actually try to check all the columns and try to see which rows that it can actually merge, right? So in this case, the only thing that you can merge which has a similar value is supposed to be A, the student name, right? Here, okay. Just to show you how it actually works, maybe I'll make some changes on the data frame. Okay, maybe you can also okay, yeah, we don't have any similar things at all. So maybe instead of age, this one will change as class. So maybe the class 10, that's what's the class lah. This one, because the school is referring to A, this one also I just purposely, or maybe this one also put class 9, for example. So this one I just try to put it as primary. There's no common ground earlier for it to actually merge, so that was the issue. So let me just try to create something which has a common data. Okay, now we can actually see when we're trying to merge these two data frames, right? The only thing that is common is this one, A, student name, right? Here there is the gender, but here don't have the gender. Here have the age, don't have the age. Here the school, you see the primary and primary. This one don't have the class, but this one has the class, which is class 9. Okay. So the common ground is the A and also the primary, right? Here under the gender, sex, and also the age and also the class, because here it has the NaN and here has the NaN, it will merge together. So let's go now, we look at the merge. Yes, do you see now? It actually merges the data frames, the value, the rows that are the same, and it merges them together. Earlier there was no common thing for it to actually merge. So here is when you're not specifying anything, what it does, it actually checks all the columns where you can actually find the common. So when it checks all the column, so under the column student name, the only thing that you can find the same thing is a common thing. Here is there's no value here, so it'll merge, and also the school, which is also primary. So this becomes the under school and under student name, there is this common value that it can actually merge. And because here there is no values, it able to merge as a single data structure. So that's why you are able to get this value. Okay, so first thing is, of course, know the difference between the concat and also merge. Right? Concat is just join, but the merge is different. Merge, it actually, what it is, this as how I mentioned earlier, it merges only those columns together for which the key entries, the student name, right? Just now the student name was A, class. In our case, this now the school was the same, right? However, the concat operation returns all the rows, even with the non-available values. So let's see if we have multiple key columns. Actually, just now we have this is the multiple key columns, right? And we want to merge on the basis of only one column. That means you just want to see in terms of one column and you want to merge. Just now when we didn't mention anything, it actually checks all the keys, all the columns where you can actually find a common entry and try to merge. But now you can actually use the option to specify a particular key to merge the data. So in this case, let's say if you want to use, let's go back. So these are all the keys, right? So let's say if we use, because if we use a student name, I think the only thing that you can merge is the student A, right? Let's say if you try to use the school and try to merge using the key school, and it'll try to check and see. So pd merge. So you're gonna merge my frame 1 with my frame 2, but now you're gonna use the option of on which column you specify the key name, right? So here what happens is that it actually combines. So you can see that the merge operation, it renames some of the key attributes which are common for both data frames but not used for merging. So that's why you have the student name X and student name Y. So here on the premise of school, so what is it doing? It's trying to merge primary altogether. It's trying to merge the primary together. But why you have why it has the student name X and student name Y? Why it actually creates a new column? Because if you go back to the table, this one, if you look at primary, right? Because we are looking at this school, right? Primary, this is primary, and this is primary. So when you're trying to combine primary, this primary of A, it is able to combine together, right? This A, this particular row gets combined together with this. So it becomes a new row of A, the sex gender is M, age is 10, primary, and class is 9. So you can see here, that is the, where is it? The first, this one, this option, right? Is able to merge it together. But when you look at primary, there's also another option of merging, right? Which is D. but you can't join everything together, right? Because D is different from student A. So it creates another new entry. So that's why you have this one, A, M, H, and primary, and student name, and also the class. So on the premise of primary, it can actually try to merge with this and also with this combination. Is that okay? So by right primary, there are three, right? 1, 2, 3. This one and this one managed to be combined together. Another one is with this one, primary. So the A, you try to merge together with primary, but you can't combine everything together because of the student name is different, which is D, right? Earlier one, it managed to combine AE. The second combination is AD. Likewise, the same thing also on the premise of secondary. So student names are not the same, so you can't merge. So it shows that B can merge with E, C can merge with E. So this is what happens when you're trying to use the merge, and it actually creates, it renames those attributes. But of course, if we merge on the basis of the student name, right, you actually get back totally different results. So this will be something like how we did earlier, like PD merge my frame 1 and my frame 2, specify on the student name, right? Student name. I'm sorry. Merge 1, my frame 2, student name. Let me just check whether I use student name or what. Student's name, sorry. So this is small spelling mistake, typo. Student's name. So now on the premise of student's name, get student's name, and it shows all those. These are two primary, right? This is because you are getting it from here. This is one set, this is another set, but this is the common thing, A and A. So that's why you are able to get that two different thing. Okay, is there anything else to cover for now? Merged it. So here we can see that when you actually merge, so therefore need to be quite careful whenever we're trying to select the column name before we actually want to merge. So that's why what columns that you want to actually consider for merging is actually quite important. But let's say we can actually also merge on the basis of indices by using join. There's another function that's known as join. Now, when we want to use this purpose, both of the data frames shouldn't have the same column names. Then only you can actually join. So join, it doesn't merge. We're actually trying to, in other words, it's like concatenating, but it's concatenating on like on the x-axis, but it's merging in the sense of the index, right? Why we say we want to join on the basis of index is, if you see, where is it? This is merge, is not Where is the original data value? This one. So we can actually merge on the basis of indices. That means this is, you see the index, this is 0, 1, 2, this is 0, 1, 2, right? So we can actually merge based on this index. Earlier we actually merged by we used the column, right? We can also try to merge using the index. But when you want to merge using the index, you have to use the join. But when you want to use the join, both data frames should not have the same column names. If you have the same column names, then what happens? You'll try to merge, like how this is what happens when you actually try to merge, right? This is all the basis of trying to merge based on the column names. So when you're merging based on the column names, then of course it look for the similar entries and trying to merge it together. If it doesn't find the similar entries, then it'll give all these possible combination of entries. So this is what happens, right? So for this join, let's again try to create the let's try to view again the data frame. This is my frame 1. So my frame 1 has student's name, sex, age, and school. So let's see what we have for my frame 2. So my frame 2, student's name, class, and school, right? So both of this, my frame 1 and also my frame 2, they have the same indexes, right? Indices. So now we are trying to merge the indices based on the basis of indexes, not based on the basis of the column. So, but in order for us to do that, we have to make sure that none of the column names are the same. So in this case, you can see my frame has sex, age, and school. And here you have student's name, class, and school. So what are the same thing that we have? The same thing that we're having is student's name and school, which are the same, right, as previously. So we need to make sure that if we want to combine based on the index, we want to merge on the basis of indices, we have to make sure that none of the names are the same. So therefore, we need to rename the columns for my frame 2. So my frame 2, let's change the names of the columns. So earlier it was student name, so but then we put student's name 2, just change the name, it's not the same thing. Class remains as it is, we don't have to change that, but school, we change to school 2. So now let's try to view our my frame 2. So yes, so we have a separate name now, right? So now we can actually merge this my frame 1 and my frame 2, but we are going to use join operator, join. So my frame 1 will join with my frame 2. So this is on the basis of index. So now you see the index are the same, it joins together. So you can see the student's name, school. So this is the first part for the first my frame, and this is second. This is my frame 2. And why we're able to join it like this? Because the column name was not the same. That's why we're able to join. So these are some of the things that we can actually do in terms of merging and also join. So in terms of merging, we have to be very, very careful on which column that we want to select. But if we want to merge on the basis of the indices, then we can actually use join. So the last aspect, we will look at combining data. So this combining data, let's say we have two data sets with overlapping indices. And let's say if you want to keep values from one of the data sets, if an overlapping index comes during the combining of the data sets. Now, of course, if the index is not overlapping, then the value is kept. And this you can't do with merging or concatenation, right? Because in concatenation, even though if you have the same index, it just combines it together. And merging, you can actually do this as well, because for indexing, it merges together with the index, right? It merges together with the index. So you can't combine in that way. It's not combining, it's just like adding, right? It's just adding. based on the same index. This is merging but using join. So you're just adding, and concatenate, it just adds even though you have the same index. But let's see if you want to combine the data. So only the combine first function provided by the pandas library allows you to perform this kind of operation. So let us actually try to create two data frames and try to see. We'll purposely create an overlapping index. So let's go to my series 1 equals to panda series. We are creating a series for this one, a single dimension. So let's say we have 50, just put in some value, 40, 30, and 10. I think 5 is enough. And this one we set the index. Let's see, value as 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's try to view this as my series 1. Yeah, so we have this. So we'll do the same also. We'll create another one. Let me just copy and paste it. But this will be my series 2. My series 2. So this one we have maybe 300. Just for entry, but we'll keep an overlapping index. So let's see, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now we have this with the index, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, and this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we have an overlapping. All right. So let's say when we want to use the combine first. So to keep the values from my series 1, we combine both series as given below. So you have to write my series 1 to keep the first one, and you're going to combine first with my series 2. And what happens is that you see that from index 1 to 5, it is keeping my series values 1. After that, it starts from the my series 2. So this is when you actually trying to keep the first my series value. So likewise, if you do the other way around, so what happens? So to keep values from my series 2, we combine both as follows. So we're just going to change this 2, and this is going to be 1. So now what happens, you see that the indexes 1 to 2 is actually taken from my series 1, but from index 3 onwards is actually taken from my series 2. So these are, I think this is the last of it. We're not going to go to the data transformation now. So this is some of the what we have seen is on concatenating, merging, and also on combining data. So these are some of the subtopics that we have seen under the topic of data manipulation and putting the data together. So next we will see on how do we actually start to do some data transformation. So thank you.